Hello and welcome to the Tenfold AI Podcast Market Watch Edition. This is my probably favorite part of the week where I get to talk to marketers who are in the trenches, getting their hands dirty, working with clients, running agencies, acting as marketing director, whatever they're doing in marketing. And we get to ask them questions. What's it like today on the front lines of marketing? I'm Heather Gerdes, co-founder Promo.ai, and I'm joined today by Joel Crampton, who is a fractional CMO. Hey, Joel, how you doing?
Hey, Heather. Good to meet you. Oh, I know it's kind of confusing because I look like Travis Kelce and I'm wearing Chiefs. And you
Spitting
think this
image.
is the New Heights podcast, but yeah, Taylor, I think, is going to be coming and making an appearance here in a little bit. So let's make sure we leave some room for her.
That is so funny. Just this morning, I was like, I like to make up fake lyrics to songs, just sometimes in my head, sometimes out loud. And I was kind of like riffing on a Taylor Swift song, but it was about how she was demanding to be married at the Super Bowl because it's her day. I don't know. It was one of those weird moments that creatives have sometimes.
Are we going to do some karaoke on this?
Karaoke. Why not?
All right.
Well,
It's Friday. It's Red Friday here in Kansas City. Let's have fun. I haven't started drinking yet, but can be convinced to do so.
there you go.
Oh, karaoke.
Yep, it's almost chili season, and I feel like chili and football season go hand in hand, and that's what I'm here. I'm here for the snacks. You keep the sports. I'm here for the snacks. Cool. So, yeah, Joel, we have bumped into each other, networking events. You have a really interesting specialty that I'll be honest, when you first told me what niche you're in, I was like, ooh, that can be rough. And I'm kind of setting the stage for announcing what that niche is, but you work in a category that is, in my experience working with companies in your category, can be really difficult when it comes to marketing. You've got lots of obstacles. You have real obstacles in the sense of compliance and regulations and kind of like fighting with your hands tied behind your back sometimes. But then you've also got these kind of mental obstacles of, well, we're just in a space that doesn't do much marketing. And you're kind of like, isn't that amazing? Like, it means you can stand out in a red ocean pretty easily. So why don't you tell folks what niche is that, or what industry space is that?
So at the high level, it's financial services, but I have certainly niched down, however you want to pronounce it, into the financial advisor world. And some of the tangential other firms like asset managers, boutique manager, mutual fund companies, insurance brokers, but kind of that realm is where I've been playing in as a fractional CMO. And you're right, Heather, it's a very complex world. And lots of people have said to me, Joel, do you have experience in that industry? I'm like, absolutely, I do. And they're like, well, that's probably good because I would never go into that industry cold. And so that there's certainly a barrier to entry from a marketing standpoint, because if you don't understand the complexities in the financial services world, especially when it comes to compliance, what you can and can't say, I mean, there's big fines from the government if you get something wrong. So the SEC is after people for some of the littlest things, and they're trying to be a little bit more consumer friendly when it comes to marketing, as far as allowing things like testimonials in your marketing, which other industries have been able to do since the dawn of time. But I think from an SEC standpoint, they're trying to protect customers, and so they've kind of went way far on the pendulum, and now they're trying to bring that a little bit further back. But you've got that ingrained mentality with founders of these financial firms. They're like, well, we can't do testimonials. So that kind of stretches where we just don't want to do marketing because we don't want to go afoul of the SEC and get fined $100,000 because we sent out an email that wasn't compliant. And so there's certainly barriers to entry for people like me coming into the industry. But since I've worked in it for 20 plus years, I understand the complexities and what you can and can't say. And it really just comes down to figuring out if you want to say something, find another way to say the same thing, but that's in a compliant way that's not leading or promissory. And so a lot of times when I'm working with compliance professionals, I can understand, there's certain words or phrases that they're immediately going to flag. And so you use your thesaurus and let's use this different term, and all of a sudden it becomes completely fine to use. So I think just understanding from a back end perspective, the limitations. Yeah, it's been fun, but a lot of it is educating founders and presidents, CEOs of some of these financial services companies that I'm talking to that, hey, it's okay to do marketing as long as you do it in a compliant way with the audit trail in place, have your checks and balances, make sure that you're doing everything you should from a compliance standpoint so you don't get flagged. But because there are so many roadblocks and challenges to marketing and financial services, like you were saying earlier, Heather, it is easy to stand out because there's so many companies that just don't want to do any marketing at all. And so by just doing a little bit, you rise above the pack and you stand out in what we would consider the sea of sameness when it comes to financial advisors.
Yeah, that's very cool. Somebody's got to do it, man.
Hey, I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah. Well, the way I think of it is it's like, businesses, there is a game analogy you could make. It is kind of a game. You can think of it that way. And every game has rules. And the way to win the game isn't to sit on the bench, you know, Travis Kelsey. You do have to know the rules. You have to play the game. The rules shouldn't impede the playing of the game and ultimately the winning, right? So, how did you get into marketing? Were you a financial advisor? Did you say, I just really like the website building part of my job?
Yeah, it's been a journey. My very first entry into marketing was when I was at the University of Missouri in Columbia, MIZ, go Tigers. We've got a big game coming up tomorrow. So by the time this podcast is out, I'll either be happy Joel or sad Joel. So we'll figure out
Okay.
how that's going to go, but it's a big rivalry game. But so I went to school at Mizzou and knew I wanted to get into business. Wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in the business world. I thought maybe an accountant. And so I had accounting 101 and realized that was extremely boring to me. So I said, okay, not accounting. And I kind of wanted to general business management, and that just didn't seem as focused as I wanted it to be. And then I had a marketing 101 class taught by a professor whose first name was Joel. So immediately I knew he was going to be a cool guy, but he had a long career in corporate marketing, a lot of big name companies, had a lot of war stories, and just sounded really fun. And he was a really funny guy. So that kind of got me interested in marketing just from the very beginning. So I started taking more and more marketing classes and just fell in love with the different sides of marketing, with the ability to use both sides of your brain, left and right brain. So you've got, the creative aspects with the design and, building the websites and that type of thing. But also the analytical side where you're doing surveys, you're looking at data and statistics and all those different metrics and just kind of figuring out how all those kind of combine into one cohesive marketing strategy. That's what gets my blood flowing every day when I'm working with companies. And so that's how I got my start, I guess, in marketing, and just been, like I said, it's been a journey ever since, working with a lot of different types of financial services companies, anywhere from working at Aflac, which was my first job out of college, going door to door in a business to business capacity, trying to get Aflac insurance offered to employees of those small businesses. So that was kind of my first foray into talking about financial services. In that instance, it was insurance, but I was marketing myself as a 100% commission, insurance agent. So I understand the pains of those professions now, but quickly realized sales was not where I wanted to be. I'm not good at doing 100% commission. I needed a little bit of steadiness in my life. And I love the thrill of the sale too, as much as the next person, but it didn't really get me going. And so quickly went back into marketing and joined a financial advisor firm, and kind of been in and out of financial advising firms throughout most of my career. Spent some time in kind of some of those adjacent industries like private real estate capital or commercial PNC companies or mutual fund companies. So kind of been in and out of a lot of different areas in financial services, but I really appreciate the financial planning aspects of the businesses that I work with now. I love doing my own financial planning. I used to pick my own stocks and realized that's kind of like gambling. And so kind of de-risk my portfolio, but at a point where I'm at kind of outside of that DIY phase of my life and ready to hand it off to a professional. So I certainly understand when it comes to working with financial advisors, the mentality that customers are experiencing once they do build up some sort of significant wealth. Not that I am affluent or high net worth or ultra high net worth, like a lot of my clients are targeting, but I understand kind of that mentality and that process. So that's kind of my
Yeah.
journey in a quick little nutshell.
Nice. Very cool. So we've talked about regulations, compliance, and you shared one specific kind of like thought process, I guess, about the thesaurus.
Source, yeah.
The thesaurus. You
Do kids
pick that
nowadays know
out.
what that is? Do they even know what a dictionary is? Do they know those things used to exist?
I don't know. My kids probably think it's a kind of dinosaur or something, a thesaurus. So, yet you would find different language to say the same thing within compliance. What are some other, I guess, like tips or tricks that you have used or that you do use when you're balancing regulation and innovation? Because you want new, you want exciting, you want different. What's your kind of philosophy on balancing those two worlds of we have to follow the rules or we're going to get fined and we got to do something exciting and bold?
Well, I mean, AI tools are fantastic. They're at the source now, and not just words, but in the way your entire message comes about. I mean, you can put something into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, well, I want this to sound a little bit different. So it takes that entire block of text or your messaging and shifts the tonality of it a little bit. And actually what I've done is created my own agent within ChatGPT where I put in all the marketing rules and regulations from the SEC. And so anytime I am creating marketing messaging for my clients, say, here's this database of information. Make sure that anything you're creating for me doesn't go against what's in those laws and regulations from the SEC. And so I use that as a kind of a checks and balances before it even gets to my clients, who then would have to submit whatever I create for them to their own compliance teams. And so it creates a much more streamlined process. So that certainly helps, again, kind of understanding from an SEC, marketing standpoint, making sure that whatever you do give to the client, they have at least a little bit better of understanding that what I'm producing for them has kind of gone through a checks and balances process already. And so they're a little bit more open to the things that I'm suggesting. And so they kind of, they're financial advisors in general are all about de-risking everything in their life and for the portfolios that they create for their clients. And so if I can bring a little bit of de-risk marketing messaging to them, I think they really appreciate those efforts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, the AI tools do help with that. I can see that because you can kind of build in those guardrails so that you can kind of stay in that creative zone. Let the AI handle the guardrails. We certainly implement things like that within ProMode and outside of finance as well, like medical. They have a whole host of other considerations with, in regard to regulations. So that makes a lot of sense. What about, so that's kind of innovation in copy, I guess, like language that we're using. What about innovation in your tactical mix of what your clients are doing? I'll give one example of something I liked that a financial advisor did And I guess it's fairly common. They tend to dedicate a good amount of resources and budget to like client appreciation events and collateral or swag. Like that's kind of where a lot of their resources go.
Sure.
And obviously, that's an appreciation gesture and also kind of like a farming ground for referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, invite your friends, invite your family. We're going to have this event. One financial advising firm locally would do a thing where they rent out a movie theater
Mm-hmm.
for like a must-see flick, right? And invite all their clients. And they would also attach kind of a charitable cause to it, like veterans cause or etc. So it's a fundraiser. They get kind of the charitable angle, client appreciation, all those things. So love that. Like that seems fresh to me for a space like finance. What are some other like innovative tactics that you're excited about?
Yeah, I used to work with a firm that did the movie nights too, and this was, gosh, probably 20 years ago when we were doing these. But that concept is not new. I remember one of the movies that we were showing to our clients was Gone with the Wind. That movie is not new. It's not a recent blockbuster hit, but I think it just comes down to understanding who your customers are and the things that they're interested in. And we're talking to, at that time, 20 years ago, retirees who were in their 70s. And so you think back into the movies that they really enjoyed when they were younger. And so we're back into the Gone with the Wind days. So nowadays, if you think what are the classic movies that were out when you were 20 years ago? I mean, those might be the movies that you might be showing now. You could certainly rent out an entire theater. And it's not that expensive, especially if you're only doing 30 people. I was looking for doing something like that for my son for his birthday when he turned 30. But it was something like $700 for 30 people. And I was like, well, sorry, bud, you're not getting a
Yeah.
$700 birthday present, but maybe when he turns 18, that might be some sort of present for him. So I think I think there isn't a lot of innovative, fun things that I can think of that advisors are doing. It's just the kind of basic blocking and tackling. I think people aren't expecting some grandiose gestures. They just expect you to manage their portfolios in a very somewhat conservative manner, especially if they're in the retirement phase of their life. They don't want to lose money. And so some sort of appreciation goes a long way. But again, you're not giving them iPads or, big tech things like that. Like you're just showing some sort of appreciation. And, one of my clients does an annual pie drive at Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Very well received. My realtor does that to me,
Mhm.
and I love it. It's just a $15 pie from Costco, and that just goes,
Mhm.
especially because if you think about financial advisors, they may only be talking to their clients once every, 3, 6, 9, 12 months, maybe once a year generally, once their plans are in place. Just little gestures are good. I mean, once a year, um, appreciation events are always great. But I just showing some sort of appreciation and keeping your clients engaged with you and your company. I mean, even monthly newsletters are just kind of basic things that you can do. Again, it doesn't take much to stand out from the rest of your competition. And most of the time, when you have a client, they stick with you for a long time. They don't want to, they're at a point in their life, especially retirees, they don't want to change much. And so, unless you're providing terrible service to them, they're generally not going to move. But you also want to make sure that you optimize the opportunity for them to recommend you to their friends and family. And that's where you kind of bring in those bring a friend events where you can invite them to a dinner or a movie. So again, there's just not a lot of innovation when it comes to a lot of the clients that I think the advisors that I'm working with. So, and you do have to stay under those rules and regulations from the SEC about how much money you can actually
Mm.
give to, clients from some sort of promotional items or that type of thing. And so I think there is, I think it's $100 limit per year. So again, there's not a whole lot
Mhm.
of innovation happening, not a lot of fun things. And I think that is just enough for people to stay happy with their current advisor and recommend them to friends.
What about top of funnel tactics? I don't see a lot of financial advisors really focusing on top of funnel at all. Of course, in large orgs, enterprise, Merrill Lynch, corporate, the big kind of household names, they do top of funnel marketing, right? They're doing digital ads, they're doing SEO, they're doing TV and billboards, and you name it, often with those very sort of blank slate campaigns where it's just branding. Just here's our logo, here's our name, slogan, you know, like very safe and broad.
Right.
But what are some top of funnel tactics that you like to encourage your clients to look at to kind of keep that pipeline rather than dedicating everything to one bottom of funnel, more sales enablement?
Mhm.
Like how are you reaching up that funnel?
I think the easiest way to think about this is there's so many financial advisors out there and other types of firms that are only growing through referrals only. So they typically don't need to do a lot of that top of funnel marketing. They just rely on their network and their top notch client servicing to build that referral pipeline. And so that there's things that they can do to expand that pipeline of referrals, to have a coordinated effort to generally ask for referrals. I mean, whether it's in, some sort of footer in their email, newsletter, or just having those conversations with your clients once a year, being very, with the soft approach with when it comes to referrals. But eventually, when companies are starting to grow, let's say, they get to that 100 million in asset mark and they're just, two or three advisors working at the firm, eventually they run out of people to refer. That pipeline dries up, and that's where they need to start engaging more of those top of funnel activities. So do more of the, whether it be Facebook advertising or content marketing, creating some sort of email campaigns to nurture any leads that do come in, but generating new prospects. There's a lot of different layers that they can implement to build up that top of funnel. If they want to do local media outreach, advertising in the local business journal, attend networking events at the country clubs. And there's a lot of things that are not new in the financial advisor world of how to generate more prospects. But from a digital standpoint, things like meta ads are pretty popular because you can do a lot of targeted advertising there. The problem when it comes to meta ads, especially, is you're interrupting people's life when they see your ad. They're scrolling through their phone and they're looking at pictures of grandkids and, vacation photos or where they're going to go or what their friends and family are up to. And so they get your sponsored ad and they're not quite in that mindset of where they want to talk to a financial advisor. Most of the time they already have one, but if there's some sort of messaging on there that can pique their interest, that speaks to them, they may click on your ad, may fill out your form, but so I think advisors need to look at that as an opportunity to softly engage with those types of people and understanding where they're at in the buying process and just deliver them some value add content and have lots of opportunities in your follow-up email marketing or whatever your drip marketing is, whether it's email or direct mail, but just to add some value and always have an opportunity for that person to reach out to you and schedule a call. But I think it needs to be a soft sale approach until that person is actually in the mindset to reach out to you and schedule that call. So I think the overarching thing here is just understanding where your leads are coming from and what their mindset is.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Very cool. What do what do you kind of forecast for the future of marketing in finance? Looking ahead, let's say 5 years, and I know it's like, how do we know? With all the changes, how are you supposed to have a read on this? Curious, the future of marketing, like where's the channels, customer behavior, new expectation, and what's driving that future? Like, what are you thinking, feeling, both yourself and among clients when you're talking about the future and what's driving changes? Is that making sense? Like, is it the customer? Is it we need more revenue? Or trying to gobble up more firms? Because we also have an interesting dynamic, just to add even more complexity to this question. Like, a lot of financial advisors are retiring. A lot. And that's just a generational kind of trend with baby boomers retiring, transferring those books of business to their kids, to younger advisors. Like, how will that affect marketing in your space?
I think you're spot on, Heather. There is a lot of older advisors out there that are looking to exit the business, but there's also a lot that want to continue their legacy. Maybe it's not named the Joel Crampton financial planning firm, it's the Blue Ocean Financial. So there's no name attached to the business. And so there is a legacy that they continue on from a client servicing standpoint. And if they continue on, hopefully there's an opportunity for trailing revenue for that advisor that does eventually step away from the business. But I do see a lot of advisors who are nearing the retirement age and they want to step away from the business, but they're not quite ready to step away, and they want to make sure that their clients are being handled by another advisor that provides that same level of touch and service. And so they're starting to bring on junior advisors or advisors or more maybe mid career. But a lot of times those advisors are coming in without any clients. And so it does look like some sort of lack of marketing. Let's see, how would you say this? The advisor has grown through referrals, and they're bringing on an advisor that doesn't have any of their own clients. And so to make the practice seem more attractive for this upcoming advisor, if they wanted to sell to them, there needs to be some sort of pipeline for growth. Yeah, they can take over the servicing of clients, but a lot of times when that happens, a lot of clients will go away. And so I think you have to come in from a marketing standpoint as a business owner, understand, what do you need to put in place to help grow this new advisor's book of business. Yeah, you can bring them into client meetings and they can kind of take over some of them, but they want to have some of their own clients eventually too. So what are some of the things that we need from a marketing standpoint to drive in some new prospects, to help with that, build that new advisor's book of business? So it really just depends on the advisor itself and where they're at and where they want to take their practice. So do they want to just sell it and be done with it and just retire off into the sunset and a boat in Florida, or they want to continue the legacy of the company that they built over the past 20 or 30 years. And, I think they have to understand what it would take to continue the business once that person steps away. And so there has to be some strategic discussions going on.
Well, that's kind of, some of that is very general for all businesses, right?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
if a business is like, should I be doing marketing? Well, what do you want your business to look like?
Mhm.
Because marketing is for that future state, right? Like, that's
Marathon, absolutely. Like,
it's a
what's the end
marathon,
goal look like? Yeah.
right? It's the seeds you're planting for the harvest you want later. So if you're a referral business and you're happy with the size of your company and you're not trying to attract new advisors or clients, if those things are not on your to-do list, maybe you don't need to do marketing,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That's a lifestyle business and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's when those goals start to reach beyond what you see in your office today, that's when you bring in Joel
Hmm.
to assess that. Hey, my goals don't match my current reality, right? Like, last year, I was like, man, I am really getting fat. And so I called a personal trainer and hit the gym and did the work. And, my current reality did not match my desired state, right? So that's when we plug in those advisors. But yeah, I think there's so many financial advisor firms. I'm thinking of several right now that they have a niche. They've done the work to figure out who they want to work with. Like the one I use, he happens to specialize not in me necessarily, but he has a lot of business owners, specifically ER doctors,
Hmm.
because a lot of them run as independent contractors. And doctors are not, known for also being great at financial planning.
Hmm.
chalk that up to whatever you want, like all of the bandwidth of the brain dedicated to this other thing. And now they're a business owner. They're like, I gotta be an ER doctor. I can't even imagine the stress of that life. But this financial advisor knows the ins and outs of that world really, really well. And so that scenario is like a dream, I would imagine, for a fractional CMO to come in and say, oh, you don't just work with everybody? Great, because now our machine can point in a very specific direction. And you can lay out really poignant strategies to reach those people.
Yeah, no,
Have you
I completely agree.
seen that?
I think that's the mental shift that needs to happen when it comes to an advisor's marketing. If they don't want to be all things to everybody, then they need to have that as part of their messaging. So if they only want to target physicians, like in your example, then they should have all their messaging on their website and all their other about physicians, so that when someone comes to their website who is a physician, then they're like, oh, these guys get me. Let's engage with them versus the next guy down the road. And vice versa. If someone comes to the site and maybe they aren't a physician, maybe they're an optometrist, and there's still a little bit of other industries that I think you can target with some of your marketing. So maybe it's not just physician, maybe it's the medical field. But I think niching down is exactly what advisors should do, because everything else is just kind of that sea of sameness. I mean, you're kind of delivering the same thing to everybody. And I think, like I said, when you're creating any sort of marketing messaging, it should be targeted to one specific audience, so that when that audience sees your message, they feel like you're talking directly to them. So it does feel a little bit more personalized, and certainly on Meta and some other ad platforms, you can target them. You can target your audience based on some of those demographics and other special interest areas. But I think on your website, it's pretty easy to create those buckets of people. So you've got the different categories of whether you target retirees, pre-retirees, high net worth individuals, business owners, foundations. I mean, those types of things should be immediately called out. So when someone visits your website or gets an email or sees one of your ads, they understand that this messaging is meant for them, and they're more likely to engage and learn more about your company. Otherwise, it's just going to be lost in, like I said, that sea of sameness. So I certainly, that comes down to having a very strategic, targeted approach to marketing, which I don't think a lot of business owners understand how to do that. They may understand what it is, but they don't know how to actually implement that and make sure that that is ingrained throughout their marketing from beginning to end, from top to bottom of that funnel. So I certainly think they should do as much research as they can to become knowledgeable enough about marketing, but somebody needs to be that guide or that sage alongside them, so that they are experts in financial planning or whatever their niche might be, but they're not a marketing expert. And so I think the best advisors understand their limitations in certain areas and will bring in experts as needed. So in your case, a personal trainer or, like a physician isn't going to be administering like anesthesia. Like, so there's specialists within the, medical fields. And so I think advisors need to understand that they shouldn't want to be all things to everybody, and that if they can specialize down and niche down, they're going to get a lot more business. They're going to maybe get a lot less leads, but the leads that they do get are going to be much more qualified and ready to work with them.
Right. Yeah. And clients that they want to serve. Like, there's a reason they have a niche. Like, right. They have a history of success. They click well with that group, whatever the reason. There's probably a good one. And strong messaging, strong marketing in that direction. Right. It is attracting those best clients to you. So what does an engagement with you, if someone, reaches out, I need a fractional CMO, I'm in your space, do you offer a couple of different options, or is it pretty much a set roadmap that you have for what those engagements look like?
Yeah, well, I think there is a lot of education that has to occur with a lot of the companies that I talk to, just from what does fractional look like, not from a marketing perspective, but there are firms that I'm working with that have fractional COO, so operational officers or chief financial officers or other fractionals. So if they already understand the fractional concept, great. But sometimes, I have to do a little bit of education on what does that fractional model look like. I'm not a part-time employee. I'm not a consultant per se, but I may do consulting type activities, especially in the very beginning. So generally, if you think about from a consultant standpoint, you get into a business, you understand kind of the complexities, and you put together a plan. Well, where I take over is I create that plan for them, usually within that first 30 days. Get really ingrained in the company, understand what the business goals are, what's working, what's not from a marketing standpoint. Look at that customer journey, figure out where there's gaps in service levels, where there's bottlenecks, figure out where we need to grow from a market perspective, what kind of strategies we need to put in place to achieve those business goals. So that all happens pretty quickly within the first 30 days. It's a pretty intense session for me from a strategic standpoint, developing all those documentations that I do have put together and kind of the framework that I've developed. But from there, the fun begins. After 30 days, then we start implementing a lot of those campaigns that I came up with that I think are going to really resonate and achieve some of those business goals. But it is a long-term plan. So my hope is to work with the companies for a long term, not just give them a plan and run and move on to the next client. My typical engagements are at least 3 months, if not 6 months or 12 months, or longer. And so I certainly feel like I want to get ingrained as deep as possible with the company and its work side by side. And sometimes I work with clients and they want me to join their group photos and be on their website as their CMO or their marketing leader, however they want to title it. A lot of smaller firms do appreciate that because it makes their team look better and it adds a little bit more credibility when someone's looking at their website and they see an additional team member or they see this, this management level. So that makes them look a little bit more developed as a company. Yeah, once I put everything in place in that first 30 days, then we started doing the implementation. Ideally, the company would have somebody on staff already that I could rely on to do a lot of the tactical implementation. So some sort of marketing coordinator. But like I said earlier, a lot of the firms I work with are smaller that don't have a marketing person on staff. And so I can certainly take over some of the tactical implementation. But ideally, I'd be working with a contractor or a marketing agency or someone else that can get in the weeds and actually do the things that I think will make the firm be successful. And then eventually over time, then we can grow the marketing function up enough to then justify having somebody in the office or on staff and a marketing capacity. We've demonstrated enough ROI on the marketing strategies that there's enough revenue coming in that does justify that marketing hire. And so that's ideally how I would get companies to kind of that end goal. What does that long-term strategy look like? And it's not to keep me on at the fully engaged level in the very first 30 days. It's eventually I'm going to working myself out of a job, unfortunately. But that's kind of the whole thought around having a fractional leader. I mean, you don't need somebody full time to be, butt in a seat for 40 hours a week. You can do a lot more with a lot less from a strategic marketing leader who has 20 plus years of experience, can easily get in and figure out what needs to happen. And it just takes somebody at kind of that lower level marketing level to actually implement those things. And so once we get things up and rolling, then I can kind of take that strategy and just be that advisor level after a few months or 6 months and kind of drop my engagement level down from instead of working 10 or 15 hours a week with the business, it's 10 or 15 hours a month.
Yeah.
So that's kind of essentially how I set up my fractional services. I think that's pretty typical for a lot of other fractional roles in companies, whether it's a CFO or CHRO or CTO or whatever the alphabet you want to put in that
Mm-hmm.
A blank O role.
Yeah. Do you only work with companies in Kansas City or are you geo agnostic?
Certainly geo agnostic. And almost to my detriment, but a lot of times when I'm developing marketing strategies, they're targeting a lot of the same customers in that geographic area. So if I'm developing
That's true.
medical or Facebook advertising, and they're all targeting, pre-retirees, or let's say physicians in for us, like the Kansas City area. Why I couldn't work with another firm in Kansas City that was also targeting physicians in the Kansas City area for the same types of financial planning services. So I do offer a little bit of geographic exclusivity when I'm working with companies. I mean, it just makes sense to me to not work with two companies that are competing against each other. I think there's certainly a conflict of interest there. So that allows me to then expand who I work with on a national basis. As much as I love working remotely, I do think there's so much value in having face-to-face interactions with people. So when I start an engagement with a company, I almost make it mandatory that on that 30-day mark, when I do my kickoff planning of here's what the next 3, 6, 9 months look like from a marketing perspective, that I am in person with that firm and I'm meeting everybody face to face. And so they understand I'm not just some fly by night, company that's advertising on Instagram or TikTok. Like, I'm a real person. I'm going to be a key component of their executive leadership team. And I think that allows me to get much more develop relationships with the people throughout the company. And plus it also helps me better understand the region that these companies are operating in. And so I have a lot of the same, I can understand a lot of the geographic references. And that's kind of one way that you can stand out, and that sea of sameness is all of your messaging should be geo-targeted, so that you're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs if you're doing some sort of things about the sunflowers that are here in Kansas City, and right now this is the sunflower season. Or if you're in, like, one of my clients is in Michigan and they have big cherry festivals, or they have lots of wineries. And I think just being, boots on the ground really helps me connect more to that region, and just expands my capabilities from a marketing perspective, because I create that messaging, and I have that mindset of, okay, I'm in this, I'm a customer in this area, and these are the things that I'm exposed to. These, like, I was doing some messaging around philanthropic things. And so just understanding what are the charity and some of the arts, and what do people do in that area for their pastimes. And so that just helps me become a better marketer, because I understand more of the mind of the customer.
Yeah.
There's lots of things you can do remotely, but I think just face-to-face meetings I don't think are ever going to go away in my.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's it sounds like you've thought of everything. The geo exclusivity, the how do we bridge the gap between Joel and KC and, financial firm in Chicago or San Francisco. You've got a boots on the ground strategy there. So you're getting your hands dirty, learning about the culture of the area that you're serving. That makes perfect sense. Obviously, all of those things are not things AI can replace. I mean, AI can inform you a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you could pull some pretty cool regional reports to
Yeah.
brush up on the basics. But sure, the face-to-face and boots on the ground, you're going to have a much more rich just association with that company in that area. But I have to ask about AI,
Hmm.
right? Like, it's what we do here at the ProMode Labs. Where do you see AI fitting in? Obviously, in finance, you've got like quant trading, and AI is very much in the windshield of financial folks.
Hmm.
I feel like any financial services industry. But as it relates to marketing, where do you see is the opportunity, and also maybe the proceed with caution of AI?
Well, I think it just levels the playing field. Allows some of these smaller companies to play with the big boys. A lot of the big financial companies, they've got big marketing budgets. They've got big staff that can create lots of content. And so I think a tool like Promote levels that playing field for the smaller guys that just don't have the time or the resources to create that content. And so AI tools allow you to create a lot of that content and become a little bit more nimble and agile. And so you kind of use your small size of your company, because you're able to make changes a lot faster than going through big committees and having approval processes, that you can kind of be a little bit more agile, especially when it comes to current events. And you can, capitalize on the commentary that's happening, the different messaging platforms. So, if something comes out with like the big beautiful bill, you can be pretty quick to create content around that. Or any other laws or legislations that happens, or any trends that are happening, can you easily use AI tools to create new content around that and get that posted on your socials, get it added to email campaigns. But again, it just kind of levels that playing field. So, I mean, in general, AI tools, I think, are just, a tool or utility to become better at what you do. And so not only from a marketing perspective, but from a financial planning perspective. I mean, any client can go out and create a financial plan for themselves by just plugging in some of their general information. AI tool, ChatGPT will spit out a plan, but somebody actually has to be there to implement that and hold that person's hand and manage all the paperwork and, have all those different touch points and relationships with all the different players, especially when it comes to more affluent households that have a lot of different service providers. They've got trust state attorneys and they've got CPAs and all these different people that need to have interactions with just to make sure that we're all on the same team. And I can't replace that. But
Mm-hmm.
same thing with marketing plans. I mean, you can use an AI tool to create a marketing plan in two seconds, right? But an advisor first has to understand the output of the AI tool and the recommendations that are being provided. And if they don't understand from Mark's perspective how all those different pieces interact, then they might go down a path that doesn't lead them to long-term marketing success. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then also somebody actually has to be implementing the different marketing strategies that come out of that AI generated marketing plan. Somebody has to, place the ads. Somebody has to monitor them and look at the ROI and adjust those ads over time. And somebody has to create the emails and can make sure those are sent out on time. And if we're doing direct mail, I mean, all these different layers, somebody needs to be there and managing. That's why I love having somebody, boots on the ground, like in that person's office. But in the absence of that, I can certainly manage all that for them and be that strategic partner that is looking at all these different moving pieces so that the business owner can then focus on what they do best, is generally servicing clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, leveling the playing field. And back to something we talked about a few minutes ago, the mid-market, the SMB financial advisors, they have just for so long looked up at these Goliaths. And when you talk to them, they're very proud to tell you how they are not like the big guys.
Mm-hmm.
We do this differently, we do that. And it usually is very related to, FaceTime with their clients, more dedicated service. Like you're not passed down a chain of business analysts or whoever the client facing entities are with those big companies. They're more responsive. They have a lot of very real and valuable differentiators. And with the technology at our fingertips today, we can empower those smaller companies to actually tell the public all
Mm-hmm.
of those differentiators. Because it's kind of funny how the connection is not always made that, hey, if you're seeing these differences and your clients are telling you that they notice the differences, right? That they came to you because you're not that big guy. Do you think your prospects might too? Right? So maybe they did just drive by a giant billboard or they've seen a Super Bowl commercial for your biggest competitor, but maybe they already have been a client there and they
Mm-hmm.
already don't like it and they're looking for something different. And if they only knew about these differentiators that you have and you happen to serve you know, their audience profile really well, their demographic is fitting nicely with what you do, tell them about it. And you've got the home team advantage. You're here, they're here, they want to work with someone locally. Like use all of those things to your advantage. You don't have to outspend the big guys. And something I tell clients all the time here at Promote, it's like, hey, you don't have to compete on ad budget. You can use ads very surgically,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can do location data ads. You can do really well thought out PPC campaigns. You can do some fun meta stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to spend millions a month on ads. You can win in organic content really well.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I tell, prospects, if I was talking to, one of your clients is Hey, the ads in Google today, it used to be that you could win solely on those Google paid search ads. Like you could spend all your ad budget in Google paid search and kind of dominate your space. And that's getting harder and harder because like 40% of clicks are now, or searches are now 0-click
Mhm.
searches, which means that prospect isn't looking at any website. They're not clicking on those websites.
Mhm.
They're reading the AI overview,
Yep.
right? So getting real specific with that content, speaking directly to your end user, let the algorithms do the rest. Like that's the beauty of the internet of today, is if you write really great content, you can appear in those AI overviews, even if you're on page 10 of the Google search results, which I just read a study about that. Like the average AI overview is ranking on like page 10 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but they're not page one front runners necessarily,
Mhm.
even for the keywords in that AI overview. It's just that their content was the most valuable to the end user, the most recent, rich, relevant content. So yeah, that's a space that small financial advisor shops can totally win in with
Yep, agree, and I think
some
it comes
dedicated
down.
effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And what differentiates a lot of companies is just their story. I think there's enough
Yes.
just to go around for all the companies that are out there. And it really just takes one person connecting with your story one on one, and that story resonates with them. So maybe they do want to work with one of the big guys, the Merrill Lynches of the world, but maybe they just want to work with, a husband and wife duo that has built this family practice and their son and daughter are up and coming advisors. And maybe that's what they want to work with. It's being authentic and telling your story and just letting it play out as much as you can. But again, that comes down to creating good content because no one can copy your content if you're telling your story and telling the
Right.
side of the business, what you appreciate about the working with the clients, like that kind of relationship. No one can compete against you and where you are in the cities. In some of these large metro areas, maybe no one wants to drive all the way over. So if you're just doing geo-specific messaging, I mean, that resonates with people too. So I think you can take all these different features and plug them into an AI tool and say, here's what I think differentiates me versus my competitors. Create content around this, and any other future content that we create, make sure that these different pieces and highlights are incorporated throughout the content that we create together, you and me AI tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that just ensures consistency and you continuously hit on those different points that you feel like differentiate yourselves from your competition. And then over time, the algorithms do pick that up because just like SEO, LLMs, those large language models, those AI, the chat GPTs, it does take a little bit more time for them to find your information, find your content, give you some sort of credibility or a weighted score, however they're finding you. But there's lots of different tips and tricks that you can do to be included in some of those results, and a lot of it does come down to having great content and having good, Google reviews or other social proof beyond those types of listings. And so again, there's lots of tactics, but it's not that much different than how you would rank in organic SEO. So I think what's old is new and new is old. A lot of the same tips and tricks do come around. But again, it does come down to being authentic, telling your story. And that's how I think you're going to be able to differentiate yourself much better.
Totally. Well, I'll close this out with this, and I've used this analogy before. I think it fits nicely with a fractional CMO. So I like to think of businesses as stories as well. And if you ask anyone, could your life story be a bestseller? They would probably say, probably not, right? Okay, well, maybe not if you wrote it, but if a Amazon best-selling, biographer wrote your life story, could it be a bestseller? Sure. Yeah, because they have the lens to see your business as a bestseller or your life as a bestseller. I think fractional CMOs, and you're kind of like I don't know, the marketing fairy, like sprinkling magic dust because you see the companies that might say, what's our story? We don't have anything different than anyone else has except for these key differentiators, right? But you can go in with a different lens and write their best-selling story, you know, in a lot of ways
Mhm.
and curate that story across these different channels and help their pipelines and their businesses grow. So that's very cool. So if folks want to reach you, Joel Crampton, I'll tag you in these clips, and any other way you want people to reach you or inquire about your services or just
Well,
hit you up on
find me on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Let's have a conversation.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's just a quick 15-minute phone call generally is how I start conversations with folks. And, if I can help them, great. If not, I can point them in different areas and give them some additional resources or point out things. I can do a quick 5-minute market review on anything that they want me to look at. That's certainly something I offer to lots of people. Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn. I've got a website, cmoalpha.com. You can go check that too, but much rather have a quick conversation and we'll see if there's a good fit. So
Cool.
appreciate you.
Well, thanks for hopping on. This has been the Tenfold AI Podcast, Market Watch Edition. I'm Heather, joined by Joel. And again, check him out, Joel Crampton, on LinkedIn, and we will see you next time.